Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome back to another review. Today I have a brand new Hornby steam locomotive. Something might be a little bit confusing right now because I've just introduced today's model as a new model when you probably know that that isn't really true. These models have been around for quite a long time and I've even reviewed one before. So why has he bought one again? Well, today's loco is this. It is nevertheless the new Hornby A1 locomotive which has just been released, Doncaster, and indeed there are a couple of reasons why I've picked this up to review it today. One reason is why I personally wanted to do this, and there's also a reason why you might want to see a review of this. The first reason then is the first personal reason relates to the name of this, Doncaster, because an A1 Doncaster was technically the first locomotive in double O gauge that I ever owned. Now a lot of you will know the story about my official first ever locomotive. That was around 10 years ago in a train set I got for Christmas. But what you might not know is that I knew I was getting that train set for Christmas. I actually helped to choose it, and because I was impatient and I couldn't wait for Christmas, I decided I might buy another locomotive so that I've got something else to run on the train set at Christmas. So I bought a Hornby Railroad version of this locomotive, Doncaster. It was ex-train set, the Sheffield Pullman set I believe it was. I've still got the certificate for that set on the wall behind me. So I'm quite attached to that locomotive, and so when I learned that Hornby were producing a super detailed Hornby Railways version of Doncaster, I had to try it. Okay, so that's the reason why I wanted to look at this loco again. Why might you want to see this loco? Well, it's undergone some changes. Hornby, for the first time in almost 20 years, have done several upgrades to this loco, and I really want to check them out. Now last year I did a review of a Hornby A3 which is based on the same tooling as this, and it cost me £138.60. This one has gone up 50% in price. The latest RRP on Hornby's website is £252.99, which seems almost unimaginable for a locomotive that dates back to around 2005 to 2007, that sort of era. I don't know what they're thinking there, and indeed this cost me over £200. I bought this one from Derail's Models for £206.99, and so I do have some very high expectations for this model. Upgrades though, supposedly the previously plastic running plate has now been replaced with a metal die-cast one. So hopefully that should eliminate the warping, which was a very common problem with the older Hornby A1s and A3s, and hopefully it will bring a bit more weight to the loco to make them even better pullers. Supposedly these have also got a firebox flicker effect, so LEDs in the firebox to simulate a fire. That's a really great modern feature. It's pretty impressive actually that Hornby have implemented that onto an older model. And who knows what other upgrades there might be. Hopefully the finish will be better quality than before. Maybe there will be other small improvements to the model. So is it worth that money? I don't know, but today we're going to find out. Alright, the upgraded Hornby LNER A1 locomotive. Really interested to see what this is like. I mean, last year when I reviewed one of the Hornby Gresley Pacifics, I found that it was quite an aging model, not really worth the money. Here it is again this year, so much more expensive. This will have to have been transformed from an aging and quite heavily overpriced locomotive with several quality problems to a super modern and absolutely perfect model in the space of a year. Well, I'm not sure whether that's the case, but that's what we'll find out today. Let me show you the end of the box then. So the product code for this is R3990. It is an LNER Class A1 462, a Pacific of course, Doncaster, absolutely, and it's number 2547, and this is a DCC ready model. So it does have all the upgrades and such, and I think the firebox flicker can be operated via DCC, but this is an analog model out of the box. Let me show you the back of the box. So this is classified as a 7P or a 6F locomotive. I think they might be BR classifications. In the middle, there is a brief history of the locomotives in real life. So if you want to pause and read that, feel free to. And then on the other end of the box, you have some diagrams from Hornby, and these are dated 2005, which is roughly when this model was first released. And as far as I know, this is only a partial retool. I think the bodywork and the detailing, I assume for the most part, is going to be consistent with the older model, but I'm not 100% sure on that. That's why I bought one of these to take a look. So let's take our first look then, shall we? Let me slide the outer sleeve off. Yep, there's a loco in there, that's a good sign. And there it is, our first slightly clouded, because of the packaging, look at the new A1 Doncaster. Let's pull this out. This is going to be fascinating, I think. Let's take a look at the instructions, because I'm interested to see if there are any noticeable changes in here. So here we go. Class A1, A3 operating and maintenance instructions. Let's take a look inside. Have they changed anything about the instructions? So lubrication, yeah, standard lubrication points. Body removal, yeah, and it does include how to remove the speedo assembly on the side so that you can remove the body safely. I don't think this will have a speedo, will it? No, but some of them do. I think some of the A3s probably do. So yeah, that's body removal. DCC fitting, DCC ready. Conflicting information there. One of those diagrams shows an 8-pin socket, another one appears to show a 21-pin socket. Which has this loco got? I'm not sure, I guess I can find out later on. Removing and replacing the coal, and also brake rods for both the loco and the tender. So we'll take a look at those in a second. I think there should be an accessories pack here. Yes, there is in the top there, so let's pull that out and we'll see. Alright, so what do we have inside here? So there's a little booklet in there which explains the axle we've got. So this axle is a flanged axle which can be exchanged for the unflanged axle on the locomotive. And that means that the loco looks a bit more realistic, although because of the flanges it won't be able to take the tighter curves. So really, if you're planning to run the loco and you haven't got super realistic broad sweeping curves, then you're not going to want to bother with the flanged axle. You've also got brake rigging there. Looks like maybe just for the loco, so perhaps the tender brake rigging is pre-fitted. We've got steps, cylinder drain cocks, and also a screw-link coupling for the front buffer beam. That is a great inclusion. Yeah, very nice. Not fitted by the factory, of course, because I think it might get in the way of the front bogie, or the front coupling, I guess, if you were to fit one of those. Have we got a front coupling on this loco? No, I don't think there's any provision for a front coupling, so that's a missed opportunity if we're talking upgrades. Yeah, oh well, never mind. Right, are you ready then? Let's pull this new loco out. Let's see if the finish is any better than before, and hopefully the weight will be better than before as well. And if the running plate is straight and not warped, that is a bonus too. All right, so here is the new A1, and I've got to say there's something quite special going on here. First of all, the finish looks great. Hopefully the camera is picking that up. You've got a slight satin sheen. It looks noticeably less plasticky than the previous versions of this model. But also, there is no noticeable seam across the top of the boiler. I'm pretty sure that was one of my big criticisms with the last, I think it was the A3 I looked at, but I think it was the same on the A1. A lot of people try to say, oh, it's supposed to be like that. No, it isn't. No, it was just an artifact from the manufacturing, but that seems to have been fixed now, which is fantastic. So we'll take a closer look at that sort of thing in just a moment. But first, let's lift up this loco. Wow, it does seem pretty heavy, I have to say, now that it's got that die-cast running plate as well. It should. And there it is. Yeah, it's noticeably quite a lot heavier, this. Exactly how heavier, I don't know yet. I will have to put this on the scales and then I can give you a proper comparison between this and the previous version. But in the hands, yes, noticeably quite a bit heavier. Obviously, this is an absolutely beautiful model. The lining and everything looks wonderful. The level of detail on first glance appears to be more or less the same, but then again, the level of detail was not the problem before. These are still good-looking models where the detail is concerned. The decoration seems better. The weight is obviously better. Is this worth over £200 now? On that, I'm not convinced. But even after just 30 seconds of looking at this, it's clear that this is a much better model than the one I looked at last year. So we'll take a closer look at this and all of its details in just a second, but first of all, here's a bit of history on the A1s in real life. The Gresley A1, or later A3, started life actually on the Great Northern Railway in 1922, where they were introduced for mainline passenger work to the design of Sir Nigel Gresley, and they were built at Doncaster, which is particularly fitting for this loco, I suppose. The A1, as it was initially known, was intended to perform the tasks that the ageing Atlantics of the Great Northern were beginning to struggle with, namely the mainline express passenger services, for which more powerful locomotives were quite desperately needed. The A1's time with the Great Northern was very short-lived though, since in 1923, of course, grouping occurred, and then they became part of the LNER, for which they are definitely most famous. During the 1920s, Gresley continued to experiment with his design with various modifications and such, including major changes to the valve gear, new boilers capable of much higher pressures, and they also had superheater tubes fitted as well, and there was also changes to the cylinders, I believe, too. After all of these modifications, a souped-up version of the A1 emerged, and this was then reclassified as the A3, or the Super Pacific, as it was also known, and over time, pretty much I think all of the A1s were rebuilt into this improved design, although it wasn't done very quickly. The process wasn't completed until the end of the 1940s. Of 78 produced in total, one remains in preservation, of course, and that's not Doncaster. It is instead the most famous of them all, Flying Scotsman. So let's find out specifically what the difference in weight is between the older Hornby A1 with the plastic running plate and the new Hornby A1 with the metal running plate. So let's do the old one first, see what this one weighs, loco and tender. So that one is coming in at 393, 394 grams, seems to be settling on 394, so okay. Now let's put the new Hornby A1 onto here, see what this one weighs. This one weighs 419 grams. So really we're talking around 25 grams more weight, which I think is actually quite a lot in terms of traction. I mean, when I was building my Gladstone, an extra 20 grams of weight made the difference between the loco working and not working. And it also means that for the first time ever, the Hornby Railways A1 is actually heavier than the Hornby Railroad A1, which weighs in at 403 grams. So there is definitely a difference in the weight of the new A1 as a result of its new die-cast running plate. I have not been a big fan of Hornby recently. I feel that their treatment of both customers and retailers has left a lot to be desired. But that is not going to stop me from saying that Hornby have done a fantastic job in upgrading this A1 locomotive. They truly have turned an ageing and slightly poor quality model into an extremely high quality model. They really have done a very, very good job indeed. Now, of course, we the customer have paid for this. In fact, we've paid for this very, very dearly. This is now an incredibly expensive model, but at least now it's an incredibly expensive model and also a high quality model, as opposed to an incredibly expensive model, yet also a very poor quality model. So it's the next best thing to having this affordable, I think. And even better than that, this suggests that Hornby maybe even do care about producing a high quality locomotive. So let's take a closer look at this thing. Here's a bit more on the finish. The boiler, as you can see, has a beautiful satin sheen to it, but it's not just the boiler. Every part of the bodywork looks fantastic, particularly the cylinders and even the smoke box. They're very, very good looking now. I'm going to keep the boiler in that position but exchange it for the older A1 that I've got. You can see the difference there is dramatic, much less glossy. Obviously this upgraded A1 isn't quite as shiny as the special edition Gresley Gloss A1s that Hornby produced, but I think those were a little bit over the top anyway. This is the right balance, I think, between matte and gloss, and it just looks quality as a result. Also, the improvements to the lining and the precision of the lining is dramatic as well. Here's a look at the older A1's lining. It looks good, but it's a little bit sloppy. This is much, much more precise, as you can see, and it makes a huge difference. Maybe to some it doesn't, but to me, looking at this model, this looks like a quality, realistic model. The other one looked like cheap tat. A big upgrade, of course, is the running plate, and as we know, yes, it brings more weight to the loco, but also this is perfectly straight. Look at this thing, no warping at all, absolutely fantastic. Hornby have definitely listened to criticism there, and they've addressed it, which is fantastic to see. The other big criticism I had personally, which Hornby again do seem to have listened to, is the seam line across the top of the boiler, which is now completely gone, or more specifically, it's been moved to a slightly different location, and it's been done very, very subtly. I doubt even that I will be able to pick this up on camera, but it's much, much better than it was, significantly better. So let's take a closer look at some of the decoration. So you've got beautiful lining on the splashers. This Doncaster nameplate, I'm not sure whether it is etched or not. I don't think it is, but you can say that it's a high quality plate because it looks decent. The running number on the side of the cab is also high quality, good application, and of course you've got all of the lining around the windows. Now I say this is a good quality model and the quality is dramatically improved, and it is, but it's still not perfect. As you can see, these weird glazing pieces that stick out the side are broken, and they are broken on both sides. I don't know if that happened in transit or there's some process in the factory that involves maybe holding the locos here that causes them to break, but it is strange, I think, that they are both broken in exactly the same way, so I'm not sure what's caused that. The only other quality issue I can see is the handrail on the side. It's not right. There's a point here where it transitions from straight to wonky, and as you can see, these handrail securing pegs are on the wonk, these two in fact. So that's unfortunate, but I think it's relatively minor. Still not acceptable at over £200, but it's a far cry from the horrendous quality problems that there were on the previous A1s and A3s I've looked at. The lining along that new die-cast running plate is also very nice and precise, and doesn't it look fantastic? You've got to love the LNER green livery, haven't you? As well as all of the lining and such on the rear pony truck underneath the cab, looks absolutely amazing. The decoration on the wheels is superb as well, much better than we've seen in the past. Even Bachmann's wheels are not usually produced this precisely, so very, very good lining around them, incredibly crisp painting, and the axles are nicely disguised as well with the black paint. Some of the neatest and tidiest wheels I've ever seen. You've got the little builder's plate on the side of the smoke box, which again seems to be a high quality print. And the paintwork around the front buffer beams is decent as well. You've got the black buffer housings, which is very interesting. And of course the separately fitted metal and sprung buffers. What a great feature that is. So let's start taking a look at some of the other details then. You've got the little rod underneath this cab, which is a nightmare and a nuisance normally, but this one, I'm pleased to say, seems actually quite secure. Look, I'm able to actually touch it and it's not coming off in my hands. That's an improvement. I think this is the reverser rod on the other side, connected to the underside of the running plate. Well, that's just it. It's not actually connected. There's a huge gap between it and the running plate. On previous models, it still wasn't connected to the running plate, but at least it sort of met it so that it looked like it was connected. Not so much this time. Yeah, that's quite a glaring issue right there, isn't it? So the loco's got separately fitted lamp brackets on the front of the running plate, which look good, and the vacuum pipe is factory fitted this time on the loco, although not the screw link coupling this time. I think on the last one that was factory fitted, so I'm not sure actually now why they've changed their minds on that. You've got the separately fitted handrails, lamp brackets and smokebox door handle fitted to the front of the smokebox there. These little lubricating parts are all separately fitted, possibly, or at least separately painted. They look very good, very accurately fitted, which is great. We do have metal safety valves, which is a good quality feature, a great finish on those. And this little tiny thing, I assume, is the whistle. I think that is just a plastic whistle, but it still looks all right, doesn't it? Up on top of the cab, you have the opening vents for the cruise comfort, I assume, and they are well fitted, yet still nice and easy to open and close. Let's take a look at the cab then, which has nice flush glazing, which is nicely lined. It's got cab doors pre-fitted and also what looks like a painted tender full plate, which is a bit more convincing than the tender full plate on the previous A1s that I looked at. And inside the cab, you've got a wonderful array of detail. All of the gauges and such are picked out. The pipework and such is very precisely painted, and there is quite a lot of immaculate detail on the water gauges and that sort of thing too. Very, very impressive. And for the first time ever, this locomotive has LEDs in the firebox. Now that looks to me like the LED is literally facing right out of the firebox, which means, yeah, it's going to be like looking into the sun, isn't it? Fireboxes were quite bright in real life, but is this going to be too bright? I hope not. We'll have to wait and see, I think. The tender is also excellent on this model. I think this is my favourite version of the A1 tender with the sort of streamlined shape guard around the top. I think that makes the tender look fantastic. But also making the tender look fantastic is the decoration and the livery application. Lovely lining, the LNER font and lettering is excellently applied as before. Fantastic looking underframe decoration, as you can see. Yep, that red lining, absolutely gorgeous. The coal load in the top is reasonably nice and fine, and we learned from the instructions that that is removable if desired, which is decent. You've got a fair bit of detail on the front where the loco connects to the tender, so no problems there. Nice bit of detail in the top there with the water filler cap. And then around the back you've got more lamp irons, which do look reasonably nice and fine, I think. More separately fitted wire handrails, sprung buffers, the coupling hook fitted to the back this time with no screw-link coupling on it, which is funny actually, isn't it? Because you'd think it would be more necessary on the back, but it would interfere with the rear coupling, which doesn't seem to protrude too far out the back of the tender. That's quite good and subtle. So there we go. Isn't that such an improvement? The changes are reasonably minor, but to me they make a huge difference. Looking down on the model and seeing a smooth top rather than a rough and really badly produced seam makes a huge difference. The lining and the pinstriping being so much more precise, to me, makes me feel like I've got what I paid for, rather than just being handed over some tat, having paid an awful lot for it. These things make a difference, not to mention the running plate, which is of course straight, nice and heavy, and metallic to the touch. These things make a difference, and I think they are worth paying a little bit extra for. Do I think this loco is good value for money now? No, because I think, you know, we've seen some improvements, but we've also seen a massive hike in price. So really, the value for money is not much better, but the model itself is significantly better, and that's what counts. So outwardly, yes, the model is much better. But what about inwardly? Are there any upgrades to be found inside? I'm not being dramatic on purpose here, I genuinely don't know, but let's find out. So there is the brand new Hornby Doncaster down onto the track, and this really does it for me, to be honest. I think it's the nicest Pacific I've ever had from Hornby, at least visually. Very, very good indeed. And I've got to say, it's that die-cast running plate that really does it. That's fantastic. So I've already filmed the performance test, so that's in the can, and you'll see that in just a second. I won't give too much away about that. Next, I went and did my usual look at the mechanism. And to be honest, for over £200, I was hoping that they would have, attended to the insides of the loco as well as the outside, because a mirrored improvement inside as well as outside might even have made this worth the money. But they haven't. The chassis seems to be almost exactly unchanged, which is a pity at this price. However, on the plus side, it was a pretty decent setup to begin with, so it's not a dead loss. Pickups, for instance, are very good. All of the tender wheels have pickups going to them, which is very, very handy, and all of the loco driving wheels have pickups too, so you're never going to see this loco stuttering on points unless there's a fault or something like that. It's still got the old drawbar with the sort of permanent wire connection. It's not an ideal solution, but I think it could be worse. At least it's secure, and at least the electrical connection is reliable, so I don't have a problem with that. The base keeper plate on the loco though is still hardwired, or rather the pickups are, so again for servicing this is not a pleasant experience. Very difficult to clean the pickups because you can't pull them away from the loco, and the axles are basically completely inaccessible. You might be able to drop a little bit of oil to them if you've got a proper device for doing so, but to actually clean them I think you'd have to desolder the pickups. Yeah, it's really a pity they couldn't have fixed that really. It does have proper bearings though on the driving wheels, and it has a single driven axle as before. Here is the chassis, which is substantially unchanged. It's got the same motor, which, don't get me wrong, is not a problem. These are good quality 5-pole motors, but there is still no flywheel here. Again, that's a pity at the new and astronomical price. The only addition to the chassis is this, the small circuit board with the LED fitted to it. There's a clear attempt at managing the light leakage. There is some heat shrink around the LED and some foam. So Hornby know quite a lot about light leakage, and it seems they have learnt from their previous mistakes. So that's really good to see. And inside the tender, it is just an 8-pin decoder socket. I could have sworn that Hornby had said in the past that their new releases would be now upgraded to 21-pin. And I assumed that would be the case with this because it's got the lights in the firebox and such. But no, this has still got the 8-pin, which does sort of limit you in your choice of decoder, doesn't it? But That's not too bad. And then you've got the gauge, which is 14.2 millimeters back to back across all of the driving wheels, which is more or less standard. So with that, it's time to show you how the performance went. Okay, moment of truth. Does this work, and what sort of performer is this? The last one I looked at, the A3, it was okay, but it wasn't a great crawler. Is this going to perform like a 200-pound plus locomotive? Let's find out. So, forwards direction. Let's give it some juice to first find out whether it actually works at all. It's always a bonus. Okay, so yes, it was quite the jump to life, that, but obviously this is its first ever run, so it will need quite a bit of running before it's at its best, presumably. This, of course, has not been running at this point, so it's going to take 30 minutes forwards, 30 minutes backwards, and then I'll be able to make a final call on this. But even with these few seconds of running, really, it seems to be improving. Slightly strange noise coming from it. Let's see if I can capture that. Sounds a bit like a flow of some sort of liquid almost. It's a very, very strange sound. But what is the crawl like? Obviously, if it doesn't crawl right now, we're not going to call it terrible. But let's see how it is straight out of the box. Turning it up slowly. Okay. So it seems fairly slow, but obviously it is just sort of lurching forwards a little bit at a time. Not great, I have to say. Even straight out of the box, I've seen other locos do a lot better than this. So there's work to do during the running in period. Yeah, it's got to get a lot better before I can say that this is performing like a 200-pound locomotive, or more than 250 if we're talking RRP. Backwards, let's see if it's any better in reverse. Sometimes that is true. Oh. Was it that Blue Scotsman I had that was slightly better in reverse? I would say maybe it is a little bit better in reverse. It's still jumping though. Hands off. So there's no torque there at the low speed, which isn't that important for a loco like this, but at this price I'd expect it to be a top performer at all speeds. And at the moment, it seems to be very good and smooth at the higher speeds, but not so much at the slow speeds. Let's see what the speed itself is like. I'm going to set it to 50, which is medium speed. Yeah, that seems very sensible. So the gearing obviously seems to be more or less similar to what it was before. Let's take a look inside the cab then and see what the firebox flicker is like. I'll have to pop it on the rolling road for that. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that looks really, really good, actually. It seems to come on at a fairly low voltage, and it is actually flickering. It's not just a static LED, as I think its Bachmann locos have when they're on analog. I think you have to fit a decoder before they will flicker. This one is flickering on analog, which is fantastic. I think the LED is pointing right out of the firebox, like I thought it was. But it's not that bright. I mean, modern LEDs, they can be very, very bright. And if this was a maximum brightness one, then yeah, I think it would be way over the top. But actually, it's not that bad. It's fairly subtle, and it casts a nice light onto the tender as well. So that is wonderful. Anyway, let's get this run in then, shall we? 50% forwards to start with. Let's see how it handles the track. Okay. Here it goes. I think faster already, perhaps. So I'm seeing some changes already, and it's only been running a minute or two. But as you will have seen, it didn't seem to slow down around the tighter curves. Seems to have plenty of torque up Gordon's Hill, which is great, and obviously it's staying on the track, which obviously should go without saying, but it's good that it's doing it nonetheless. Obviously all of this is good and well, but will it hold true once I hook this up to a load? So I'm going to put some coaches on later. Hopefully we will still see some decent torque in the mechanism then, and hopefully we'll see some better torque in the mechanism at the low speed. But for now, I'm just going to let this run, so I will see you in just a second, and we'll carry on testing this. So there we have it then, folks. That is performance test complete, and it's gone without a hitch. The loco seems to have sped up. I think that's definitely true during its test. Not so that it's unrealistically fast or racing along or anything, but just noticeably sped up. It was very stable, yeah, very smooth, no slowing downs or anything, nothing like that developed. Stayed on the track for the whole time, and I have to say the firebox flicker effect is one of the best I've seen. It's not too bright, which I was concerned about, but it's bright enough so that you can actually notice it as the loco runs. Like I said earlier on, it reflects off the tender, so you don't actually have to look too hard to actually notice it. That's been a problem with some of Dappol's and Bachmann's flickering fireboxes in the past. You just can't see them, you can't notice them unless you really, really look for them. With this one, you can. I don't know if you will, given your angle here, but later on, when it's running around, or perhaps already as you've seen it running around, you'll be able to notice it. So that's great. Pulling power is an interesting one then, because obviously this is a heavier locomotive now. And I think the previous one of these locos I looked at, the Scotsman in the BR Blue from last year, that came out at 25 coaches on straight and level track. This should be able to handle 29 coaches, so that's +4. It's not a huge amount, but then again, we're only adding 20 grams to this loco with the die-cast running plate, so it's not a massive amount. And there are still some Hornby Railroad Gresley Pacifics, which are better pullers than this. So it's not absolutely amazing, but it is an improvement rather than a downgrade, definitely, so no major complaints. Let's see what this loco's torque is like then. So I've set up 7 of my teak coaches, which I think is a fairly hefty brake, particularly given that I've got a bit of an incline on the layout. So I'm going to couple to those in just a second, but first of all, now that the loco has run in, is that slow speed performance any better? I'm turning it up gradually, backwards first. All right, so that does look better, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean, it is fluctuating in speed a little bit, but I would say that's definitely an improvement. Let's turn it up a bit more. There we go, so that is a smooth rotation. Well, I think that's possibly the biggest improvement running in has ever brought to a loco. Let's try it forwards. Ooh, try it again a bit slower. Oh, that's a shame. So that's weird though, isn't it? Because the Scotsman was better backwards from what I remember as well. I think it is better than it was before I ran it in, but yeah, still cogging quite horrendously there at the slow speeds. But the good news is at the, well, not even at the higher speeds, at anything above a crawl really, let's say there, perfectly smooth. So the performance overall is pretty solid. No major complaints there. If this was a shunter, I think it would be more serious, wouldn't it? But it's not. It's a high-speed express loco, and so I think the most important speeds are good. Anyway, let's go couple up to those coaches, see if the loco slows down at all on curves and such. Let's see. Yeah, this is a nice loco now. To be honest, if I'd have bought this loco at the price I paid for last year's, which was like £138, I think, I would be very, very happy with this. This would be worth every penny. It's just such a shame that they're over £200 now. It's insane, isn't it? But still, nice loco, regardless of the price. Let's see. Speeding up, speeding up. Let's go for like 45, something like that. There we go. So the theme among today's other locomotives is to be Gresley Pacifics, so see which other ones you can spot, and I will pin the comment that correctly identifies the odd one out to that theme, so keep your eyes peeled. I'll give these away though. This one is Woolwinder. This is the glossy one that I mentioned earlier on. Quite nice this, but I don't know, the livery seems a bit over the top compared to some, or rather the level of gloss does. And then we've got another one on the inside line. This one is going to be Bucklaw, similar loco. Always a faster runner though, this one. Yes. With some freight, yes. Cardinal sin right there. Oh well. Okay. Well, I think that looked pretty good, didn't it? I didn't really notice it slow down, and it's not even at 50% speed there. It's going a little bit slower, so that I think is pretty decent. So performance gets a green light from me. Yeah. Overall, it does the job. So in general, I am pleasantly surprised by this loco. It's much better than I was expecting it to be visually. I think mechanically it would have been great to have seen a few upgrades, and that's a slight disappointment. But frankly, the way the loco looks is so much better than I was expecting that overall I can say I am impressed with this loco. And the performance isn't bad enough so that I would really not recommend this. It's not as good as some new tooled locos or whatever. I think the Bachmann V2 was that better. But yeah, the performance is okay. It's not too bad. but the visuals of the loco, the way it looks, much better, dramatically better. So this is indeed my favourite Hornby A1 or A3. It's just by far the best looking one I've ever bought. Time for some ratings then on the upgraded Hornby A1 locomotive. Level of detail then, this is truly now a 5-star locomotive. There are clear improvements in the decoration and the finish. Even the old detailing was fantastic with the highly detailed cab and the separately fitted metal parts. All very, very good. The straight running plate also contributes to the realism of the model as well. And we've even got a nice addition of the flickering firebox glow, which actually is one of the better ones I've seen. So an easy 5-star there. Performance though, I've given 3.5 star. I don't think this one is as bad as the A3 I looked at last time, but at the low end it's still not performing as you'd expect a £200 plus locomotive to perform, but certainly at the higher speeds there's plenty of torque there by the looks of things, and it certainly performs very stably without derailing or wobbling or anything like that. Overall, at the higher speeds, which are the most important ones, it is a good performer, so I've given it 3.5 star here. The pulling power is improved from the older version of this model. It now pulls at 29 coaches on straight and level track, obviously 4 more than before. Still less than a Railroad A4 though, and also a Railroad Tornado, so certainly not super impressive in its pulling power, but it's an improvement which ought to be pointed out. The mechanism then, I've given 4 star because more or less it's the same. There are still issues in terms of accessibility. It's not very intuitive to sort of clean and lubricate the axles on this loco. Quite difficult to get access to the loco driving pickups as well because they're all hardwired in place. Still no flywheel on the motor, that's a pity. And the slightly out of date 8-pin socket has not been upgraded to a 21-pin. But generally speaking, the mechanism ticks the boxes. At least it's got a good quality 5-pole motor, at least it's got the bearings on the driving wheels and loads of pickups, so it's certainly not a bad mechanism. The quality then is definitely improved over the A3 that I looked at last year, so I've given it 4 star. Die-cast running plate, which is nice and heavy and also straight. Massive improvement. No more seam across the top of the boiler, it looks so much better because of that. And the quality of the decoration, as I've said, is noticeably higher as well, not just because of the satin finish, but also because of the accuracy and the precision of the lining. It's noticeable, makes a massive difference. Still got a few wonky handrails though, which aren't 100% perfect, and still had those windows which were broken on both sides, which suggests to me that could have happened at the factory. It's unlikely that in transit both sides of the model would have been damaged in exactly the same way. So it can't get 5 star, but it's a pretty good quality model, much better than what Hornby were producing as recently as last year. Value for money then, £252.99 is the RRP. Phew. Crazy. £206.99 is what I paid. That's a reduced rate at the retailers. That's a lot more money than what I paid last year for basically the same model. I paid £138.60 last year and I still felt that that was very expensive for what I got. Now they've added 50% to the price, and yes, the die-cast running plate and the improvements in quality are great, but I think this should have been a quality model at £138.60, so the value really hasn't improved, has it? Yes, it's a better model, but you have to pay so much more for it, so it's still a 3-star value for me. Maybe that is generous. Overall though, it's a good score, 7.7 out of 10. I think the Scotsman last year was 7.1, 7.2, so a definite improvement, very much so. Let's put that into the logbook then. There it is in 8th place above the Hornby B12 and below the Atlas GP40. Definitely a massive improvement. If you're looking for an A1 or an A3 for your collection, if you forget about the price, this new one from Hornby is by far the best I've seen. And taking the price into consideration, the value for money is about the same here, except obviously this is more expensive. So if money's no object, or if you're happy to spend the money, then the new version is definitely the one to go for. So that will just about do it for my review of the new and upgraded Hornby A1 locomotive. Yeah, I assume other people are going to be quite pleasantly surprised by how much better this is. Because I thought, you know, die-cast running plate, bit of a LED in the firebox, that's what they've advertised. Those are going to be the extent of the improvements, but they were not. There are definitely extra improvements in the livery and in the finish. and in the build quality of the loco, and I think that really does go a long way. So no, the loco's not worth what Hornby are asking for it. I don't think that's a surprise. I think most will agree with that. But at least it's closer to the perfect model that you would expect at the incredibly high price tag, and that, I will say, is definitely the case this time. So well done, Hornby. Thank you very much for listening to the feedback. Because you did that, you have produced a much better model than the one that was out there before, and I think those that buy this will be much more satisfied with it as a result. So yeah, please do more of that. I think there are a lot of other locos in your range that could benefit from this sort of treatment, and you'll make at least one sale if you do this again in the future, because I'll buy them to see what the differences are, because I've enjoyed this. So that's it. Thank you for watching, folks. Comment down below, let me know what your thoughts are. And that's all. I will see you again for another review very soon. Alright, cheers everybody.